11 great nights of public TV. It's Festival 75. It's Festival 75. It's Festival 75.
Okay, we want to welcome our audience. We are obviously here with members of the Monty Python Flying Circus Troupe. You know that better than I do. I'll introduce them to you, though they don't really need an introduction. Maybe the names, and you'll have some questions for them later on in the evening. But seated next to me is Michael Palin, and seated next to him is Terry Jones, Terry Gilliam, and Graham Chapman on the end. These members of the troupe. So can you give them another hand for being with us? Oh, I want to tell you.
We did that very well.
We
did that well.
We are live and going out all of Dallas, and the phones are calling, and people will probably be getting pledges coming in because, as you know, your trip through the States, this is Pledge Week for public television. We thought that tonight, we didn't want to obviously put anybody on the spot, but we did. We didn't know this many people were going to show up, actually, and that maybe some folks who are here would like to ask some questions of you, the audience, the people who have seen the show on the air and enjoyed it. Some of you have seen it and enjoyed it. You got a present. Where'd you get that? Who gave you that?
Well, it's a stuffed armadillo with one claw missing, which I was given. I was just given on the way, and I'm a bit worried as to, for a start, how to hold it. I'm not quite sure how we're going to get it through English customs. I think there was a special clause about bringing stuffed armadillos into the country. I have to leave it in quarantine. Anyway, it's very lovely, and it's definitely a male.
I think it's a boy, yes.
It's a male.
It's a boy.
Yeah, it's a boy. Yeah. And it's just eaten.
In case y'all don't know this, they flew into New York, when was it, last Sunday night or Saturday?
No, I think it was Friday night, actually, yeah.
And have been sweeping through the country. I know Philadelphia and Washington, and you were out in L.A. last night for some kind of film. Can you tell us what that is?
Well, we've just done a new film, actually, called Monty Python and the Holy Grail. We're very, very anxious to plug. We haven't got a distributor yet in the States, but we just finished making it, actually. And in LA, they had the first showing of it last night. It was the first showing in public. So it's quite a bit different from anything else we've done, in fact, actually.
Well, right now, just to sort of remind you what these guys are like on tape, we've got one little snippet. We'll let our audience out there in television land look at it at the same time that you're seeing it. And it happens to feature, in this case, Michael Palin. Okay, right. Michael was just telling me this was done in 1969, this particular show. And actually, we're getting shows that were done now, somewhat more recently than that, but 70, 71.
Yeah. I think you're just going to start showing the second series, in fact.
Right.
Mostly.
Well, I want to ask one last question, because these people are the ones who ought to have the floor. What's in the future for the troupe? Are you still going very strong in London and England and so forth?
Well, I mean, in the last 6 years, I suppose, we've made about 45 television shows in England. We've even done 2 specials in Germany, and we've done a couple of books and endless numbers of records and all that. And I think really there's a feeling that we're just going to take a break for maybe 6 months or so before we do anything else, just to restock the batteries. You know, you just can't keep churning out rubbish. Well, you can, but I mean, it's not good rubbish. You know, so taking a break.
It begins to affect the brain cells eventually.
Yeah. Well, we can still hear you with the phone calls in the background, but have we got somebody out there who'd like to ask a question? Yeah.
How's censorship in Great Britain compared to the United States?
Can you hear that?
Yeah. Censorship, my answer. How is censorship compared to...
I think off at this end.
Oh, sorry.
Who wants to answer
It's
that?
caught me totally by surprise. No, I think we've been fairly lucky. We've been left alone generally to do what we want to do. I mean, there have been a few things that have been censored on it, but not really much at all. I did some things for a Marty Feldman show that was done for ABC. Dare I mention these words? And
It's not a word, really. 3 letters.
So it could be a word. It could be cab. It could be, if you, I mean, that's all we use.
Yeah.
But And I came into lots of trouble over very silly things that we've done on Python without any worries at all. I mean, I couldn't use classical paintings if they were naked ladies and things like that. I mean, it's extraordinary what you can't do on American television. I think you can do it on PBS, and that's why I hope you all watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I think serious. I think we did feel quite strongly about that actually. That Python couldn't have gone out on any other channel apart from PBS. I think as soon as you've got sort of commercial interests, you've got people sitting up there at the top of the head of the company thinking they know what other people like. And people don't know. I mean, we don't know. We write to please ourselves, and BBC for some reason put it on. But as soon as you've got people who think they know and they're trying to sell something, they're trying to sell a product or something, they're going to say, well, that's not going to work. And in fact, it may do, but they have to pretend they know.
Have you had any trouble at all in London with it? Along those lines, censorship of any kind?
Well, they
strange
censor, there's no prior
things.
censorship. They tend to censor after the thing's been recorded, and then they'll come in and suddenly, if there's been a day in which the guy has had nothing much to do and he notices a Python script, then he may suddenly kind of ask us about certain words. But it's nothing very organised, and it always comes after we've recorded it, which makes it very difficult, because if they want a word out, then you have to actually edit the tape, and there's a kind of a noise on the tape, and it just doesn't sound too good. It's obvious it's been censored.
Yeah, there's one example. We had somebody, it was Graham actually, was saying that...
May I just break in at this point?
Yes, please do break in at this point, sir.
Shut up, Graham.
I don't think I've
Waffling on
really
all the
been
time.
as bad on an interview as this ever before in my life. I'm really doing terribly bad here. I'm sorry. Maybe later on I might be able to say something, and when I can, I'll try and chip in.
Okay, maybe somebody will help you out with a question, Graham. Do we have a question?
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just wondering how or who in the BBC you convinced to let you on the air the first time, because as I read, you had a lot of problems and stuff.
I think Mr. Chapman would like to answer this question.
Yeah.
Yes, all right. It was really that they didn't know what to expect. We'd been writing... They thought we were going to be a sort of late-night satire show, and a relatively safe one at that. And so they put us on very late at night, and in the hope that no one would actually watch. And unfortunately, people did watch. And therefore, because we had a sort of following, they put us on earlier in the evening in later series, and that meant that then we had more censorship worries. They were a little bit more worried about the kids watching, even though, in fact, when we used to go out at 11:30, most of our audience was younger people. But I think that's about it, really.
You did very well.
It's not bad to say. He's been bad like this all day. Get a word in.
Give her a chance, Michael.
I heard it.
I didn't hear it that time. To call it something. And the BBC, for some reason, had been calling it circus, and like all the costumes and things had circus on their labels. And so they insisted we call it something ending in circus, and we tried to find some name that didn't mean anything.